Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Molly Hemingway writes over at the Federalist, Federalist.com. You see her on Fox often. She was on Fox with Laura Ingraham the other day, talking about the lawsuit that was filed by the Federalist, the Daily Wire, the state of Texas, against the federal government, specifically the State Department. And the specific nature of the suit relates to the censorship industrial complex, that is, as it is becoming to be called, that has been well documented with the Twitter files, with the more recent whistleblower information that was obtained by Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger that they've begun reporting on, this cybersecurity operation that involved both the UK and US intelligence agencies. Here's Hemingway explaining the basis of the lawsuit that her outlet is a part of.
Our lawsuit is against the State Department for funding, promoting, marketing, and testing hundreds of censorship tools. The State Department actually put together a platform where they told government and military sources and educational institutions to come check out these hundreds of censorship tools. And again, NewsGuard and GDI are just two of the hundreds of these things. But it is also true that NewsGuard and GDI have received funding. There are lots of different federal agencies that have funded or helped launch these various censorship technologies. It's not just the State Department. It's also the Pentagon. It's also the Department of Homeland Security. I think Americans would be really horrified to know how much of their taxpayer dollars have gone into not just helping launch some of these things, but also helping market, promote, and work with them. I mean, there's a reason why this censorship has been so effective, and it's not any one thing, but there are lots of these companies, organizations, for-profit companies, and federal government agencies that are working together.
And this goes back to the Election Integrity Project that was stood up after 2016 to prevent 2016 from ever happening again. And this is run through Stanford University. We've talked about this quite a bit, and we're going to continue to as this develops. But just to refresh, Stanford University, organizations like the Atlantic Council and a couple of others, all receiving government funding. This was exposed in the reporting on the Twitter files, thanks to Elon Musk's disclosure, which was then put out for public consumption by Taibbi, Schellenberger, and a couple other journalists that he selected to do the report, to get the information so they could do the reporting on this. And remember, he smartly selected journalists like Schellenberger and Taibbi because they're men of the left, not Trump supporters. So you hear Molly Hemingway mention GDI, which is a Global Disinformation Index, and NewsGuard, which is another private organization that's now among whose board members include the former DHS Secretary Tom Ridge, former DNI General Michael Hayden. And this is the evolution of the censorship industrial complex to take it out of direct government funding and to set up these cutouts so that they can do with the social media platforms what the government cannot direct them to do, as they're anticipating an adverse ruling in the Missouri v. Biden case that relates to government directing third parties to do what it cannot do, which is censor Americans' speech, violate the First Amendment rights of the American people. And again, just to refresh recollections, this was Mike Benz, who's a former cybersecurity staffer at the State Department, just last month talking about the censorship industrial complexes restructuring in anticipation of 2024.
The way the censorship industry is currently being restructured in anticipation of a devastating Missouri v. Biden ruling is to do a sort of middle out restructuring, whereas instead of having things run out of CISA at the DHS, or the State Department's Global Engagement Center, it would be run out of what they're calling a middleware company, a censorship service provider who sits in the middle between the user and the platform, but is intermediated by essentially intelligence agency and government and major government figures who inform that middleware censorship companies' policies and filtering mechanisms. So NewsGuard is an example of this. NewsGuard, of course, has Rick Stengel on its board, who ran the Global Engagement Center at the State Department, Anders Fogh Rasmussen, who was the head of NATO for 5 years in the Obama administration, Tom Ridge, the former head of DHS, and General Michael V. Hayden, who was a former four-star general, head of the NSA, and head of the CIA. So that's who's in control, essentially, of the middleware censorship provider, who is now also doing censorship compliance for this new European Digital Services Act. They're trying to get congressional regulations to mandate middleware so that it looks like it's coming from the private sector when indeed it's, again, being intermediated by these intelligence cutouts.
And I did a deep dive with Mike Benz a couple episodes back on my Counterculture podcast, if you want to check that out, because it's really interesting in terms of what has transpired and what is afoot. Counterculture podcast you can get at American Greatness, as well as on the platform Spotify and Apple and so forth. For more on this and other domestic as well as geopolitical matters, please be joined by Martin Gurri. He's a former CIA analyst, presently a visiting fellow at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University. He's also the author of The Revolt of the Public and the Crisis of Authority in the New Millennium. Martin Gurri, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
The Revolt of the Public and the Crisis of Authority in the New Millennium. That's topical, considering what we're increasingly understanding the intelligence agencies, our own federal government, is doing to us, as outlined in the suit that Molly Hemingway described, as well as what Michael Benz, what Michael Schellenberger, what Matt Taibbi have been reporting on. What is your reaction to the operation of these national security and intel agencies, particularly in the direction of free expression in this country? Because, I mean, you don't have confidence in any institution or the outcome of elections. You don't have free and fair elections if you have a government stifling people's expression.
Well, I mean, I am not a young man, and I cannot. I mean, I have trouble conceiving how we got to this place. In most of my very long life, if somebody got accused of suppressing speech, the answer would be, no, you're wrong. Look at it this way. I'm not suppressing it. The answer today is, hell yes, we're suppressing it, and we should be suppressing it. And I guess the frightening thing is that there is a considerable portion of the American public, I don't think it ever rises to a majority, thank goodness, but a considerable portion that agrees with that. It says, yeah, we need truth, and of course truth is defined a certain way, and we need institutions that protect us from lies, and those are also defined a certain way. And of course that is completely contrary to the spirit of Thomas Jefferson, who was the man who decided this issue when way back when he beat John Adams and said, truth and falsehood can be decided by the public. Truth will win out if it's allowed, a fair fight. So I'm kind of I'm very much in touch with both Taibbi and Schellenberger. There's sort of intellectual friends of mine, and the stuff they have turned up is, and I've worked in the U.S. government. Okay, so to me, this is I was a CIA guy. To me, this is inconceivable. It just it leaves me stammering, as you can tell.
Well, I mean, do you have a perspective on sort of pinpointing a break where these agencies and the heads of these agencies decided that what they have done was the right and proper thing to do?
Well, I mean, you have to go back to the story I tell in the book, which is long before even Trump, because of structural changes in our information environment, there had been this huge break between the elites that have traditionally run our institutions and have done so, since the industrial age of the 20th century, and the rest of us, the public. And increasingly, the public had access to information, had a voice over the web, of course, and was voicing its frustration, its anger, its lack of trust. So that begins before any actual political event. I think the election of Donald Trump, then, of course, was just this decisive event. They, to this day, cannot accept the fact that people could have voted for him. And I'm not a Trump fan. I'm speaking strictly as an analyst. But I can tell you, people cannot accept that, the elites cannot accept that people voted for him fair and square. There had to be some sort of weird conspiracy. Lies had to be propagated. Fake news had to rule the waves. And to this day, they feel like they have to somehow protect themselves against that.
And so, I mean, it just seems to me, sort of boiling this down, that they cloak themselves as the vanguard of our representative republic. They're always saving democracy. And their perspective, much like the eco-supremacists, they want to save the planet from the people. They want to save our republic from the people.
Yeah, I mean, they call it our democracy. I always find it fascinating how possessive they are, right? It's
yeah, good point.
Our democracy, which is, the old days of the Cosa Nostra, our thing. It's a bit of a mafia, I think they haven't quite gotten to the point where they realize that democracy means sometimes they lose. I think our democracy is legitimized in their minds by its superior virtue. So, and of course, the alternative, which is Trump, is delegitimized by the fact that it's lies and authoritarianism. So you can't ever lose an election. You can't ever lose an election because that would be the end of our democracy. So they have come to the point where, I was born in Cuba, and I don't want to make stretched parallels, but, the Communist Party, you can't ever not be in charge because otherwise bad people take over and do bad things.
And so this is a story as old as mankind, which is that we now have a political ruling class that operates under the philosophy that the ends justify the means.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that's what those polls tell you, that people say, sure, we need the government to intervene in social media and the public sphere to make sure that we get truth. So truth, as defined by certain political standards, then becomes the end that we seek, and whatever means are available. And of course, that bizarre censorship, I call it the new censorship, that bizarre censorship apparatus that was erected, starting with Trump being president, by the way. All this happened behind the president's back, and then, of course, it just took off once Biden got into the White House, is, to me, the most... sitting, as I did at CIA, where to be political was death. You got fired, right? You could not be political. To where we are today, it's amazing. It's inconceivable. I don't see how you can't see that going from there to where we are now is only going to accelerate this lack of trust in our institutions to almost a nihilistic point of view.
So it'll never go back to the way it was when you were there?
Well, I'm optimistic. You know what? I'm always, being an immigrant, I feel like the American people, which is having sort of a psychotic episode right now, it's normally historically sensible. And I think, I hope and I believe that at some point we will get our senses back. But this is a struggle. I guess we have to fight against this anomaly in our historical way of looking at information and looking at freedom. We each have to do our little bit that we can, and who we vote for, what we write, what we say, how we say it, to make sure that we somehow resume this feeling that, I may not agree with what you're saying, but I will fight to the death for your right to say it. I mean, this is an old hackneyed statement, but it is the way it has been in this country forever.
Martin Gurri, former CIA analyst, presently a visiting fellow at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University. his book, The Revolt of the Public and the Crisis of Authority in the New Millennium. Martin Gurri, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
It was fun. Thanks.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Santa's coming to town. Oh, my God.
On AM 560.
Santa here? I know him.
The Answer.
There's nothing worse than hearing about people living in pain. So I'd like to tell you about Keith from Washington and his Relief Factor story. After years of activity, from college football to running a martial arts studio, at age 51, Keith's body felt like it was wearing out. So he gave Relief Factor a try. Keith says he now has, quote, little to no pain in my knees and highly reduced neck pain. Feeling so much better, he pursued a second-degree black belt. I can testify to everything except the black belt part, how much it has helped me. Relief Factor. If you're living with aches and pain, see how Relief Factor, a daily drug-free supplement, could help you feel and live better every day. To get started, try the Relief Factor 3-week quick start kit. It's only $19.95. Comes with a feel better or your money back guarantee. Visit relieffactor.com or call 800-4RELIEF. That's 800-4-RELIEF.
Go with your gut. Your dog's immune system is based in the gut. A diet lacking in nutrients can cause itching, scratching, and a weak immune system. However, there is a solution. DINOVITE. Dinovite.
It took a grand total of 2 weeks. The dog stopped itching, the hair stopped falling out.
Try Dinovite for free. Just pay shipping and handling. Learn more at dinovite.com/radio.
Happier, healthier with every bite. Over 1 million pets.